AI can help us so many ways identify safety issues. When we have a serious injury or fatality in a job site, it's just not about that one person, that worker, but you think about the people who were there on the job site with them.
When we talk about safety, is one of the things I've realized doing this work about why I'm so passionate about the future human experience is because I've come to a realization that the human experience is a finite experience.
And if they don't feel protected, they don't feel safe, they don't feel valued, then productivity is going to be topped out at a very low level. It's not going to be topped out of where you really want to see your employees perform.
This is the Future Human Experience. Just wrapped up the conversation with Rick Murray from the National Safety Council, where he talked about how the human experience leads with safety first, and how safety is foundational to the work culture that we're building every single day. If you like this episode, please subscribe and share it with others. Welcome back to the Future Human Experience podcast. I am your host, Eric Rodriguez. I am so excited for today's episode. We have a very special guest to talk to us a little bit more about what does the future human experience look like through the lenses of safety in this world that's constantly changing. Rick Murray, President and CEO of the National Safety Council, Arizona chapter. Welcome to the Future Human Experience.
Oh, Eric, I couldn't be happier to be here, and also be in this beautiful space that you get to do your podcast in as well.
Thank you,
awesome,
Rick. Yeah. Full circle moment. I know for you too, you've been so influential to this production company that we get to work with every single day. Your leadership, your guidance has not only shown what is possible to build businesses, but now you get to lead a wonderful organization that gets to impact lives every single day.
Well, I think for a lot of people, especially for me, I think mentoring is perhaps the greatest joy. There's no amount of money that can match that reward of seeing somebody be successful under some of the things that you helped them do or made suggestions to help them get suggestion, but helping somebody else just get to a level that is just unbelievable. It's so much joy.
And that is a reminder of the impact that we get to make, right, in other people's lives and the ripple effect that has.
And we'll talk about the ripple effect, especially in safety as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So Rick, tell us a little bit more about the work that you get to do today, the National Safety Council. We'll share some stories about our intersection with that, but tell us a little bit more about what is the work that you get to do, the organization, and the impact that it has all over the country.
Well, there's really two different levels of safety that we get to work in. It's both roadway and workplace. And so what we're really concentrating on is our workplace safety, and where we can help companies and individuals understand the importance of safety, and certainly looking at safety from a human standpoint, but also safety from a business standpoint, and how that we can look at the ROI from a safety. Because I came into this role as a business person. I'm really seriously not a safety person, but I think all of us need to be safety people. That's certainly, we want our children to be safe on the road, so we teach them every day. The things we talk, we don't want somebody to be hurt. We want, in the same thing, how we need to treat our own employees and say, all right, we want to protect them and be part of our flock for our entire lives. So,
well, Rick, tell me a little bit more then. So, what was that seed that planted that got you into this world today? What was it?
Well, I never say never. Not ever look through the door of opportunity, and that's been my career, honestly. And I was actually doing consulting. I do business consulting. I'm a lobbyist. I'm a business consultant by trade mostly. And I'm at home, and I get a call from a headhunter who says, "Hey, I got this opportunity," and I'm thinking, I've been the CEO of the Small Business Association and the Dental Association. So I've had some really high impact positions. And they say, hey, we've got this role with the Safety Association here in Arizona. And I thought, that's not very sexy. I don't know if I want to do it. But, God puts us in places that we just don't realize that we need to be in. And it has been the most rewarding opportunity that has been planted. And so I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this role
Awesome.
of leading the safety culture in Arizona and kind of reintroducing what this means to businesses and helping them understand what safety is. So it's by complete accident. And as in most safety professionals are in the job of safety by accident as well. So I come to this pretty honestly.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Rick, I mean, you're also part of a necessary organization that is needed when a city or a space is growing tremendously fast, right? Or this region is growing tremendously fast. So even though our fans today are listening to us in Arizona, but all over the country, the conversations around safety and how you build something that is sustainable, how you build something that is safe, how you build something that future generations are going to one day be living through matters today.
Right.
Tell us a little bit more about why does this work matter today, not only for Arizona, but the importance of having those different conversations that you're sharing with us today, that's it's just beyond just the notion of just a culture. It's a business necessity.
Well, it is, and I'll start with the culture because I think it really starts there in regards to how do employees feel about how the company feels about them, and if they don't feel protected, they don't feel safe, they don't feel valued, then productivity is going to be topped out at a very low level. It's not going to be topped out of where you really want to see your employees perform. And so really building that safety culture, but turning that into an opportunity to show them how safety can honestly have a good ROI as well. And so when we talk about ROI, it's just not about the financial side of it, but it's also the human side that we really try to talk about for our companies out there. And it's a tough conversation a lot of times. As we know, in most small businesses, what are we doing? We're really worried about making payroll every Friday, making sure that our employees are going to be able to provide for their families, and we can provide for our families as well as business owners. And so safety sometimes gets pushed to the back burner. And how can I insert myself in that equation to say, listen, it doesn't have to be something that we dread every day or where it's a money drain. How can we make this a good ROI for you and your employees?
And Rick, you remind me about that conversation in culture, and I'll share with you one personal experience I remember vividly as you're sharing with me a little bit more about putting people in the center of this. I remember we're going through our annual goals, our annual learnings, and one of the things is to say, well, people first, safety first. Okay, great. So we go through our 5 priorities, and it's, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4, priority 5, people first, safety. And I remember just having a conversation with an executive afterwards, just this kind of like, if we're really first, if people are really first, safety's first, why are we not literally and figuratively and on the actual presentation first? And he's like, I never looked at that way, right? Because even how you present it, right? When you say, hey, safety's first, but you leave it literally at the end, even though it's part of your priorities, it matters how you show up, how you present it, how you talk about it.
Exactly.
And I remember just that little shift, that next meeting, they just changed it. The exact same data, the exact same content, but they just put people first, safety first. Let's talk about that first before we touch anything else.
Yeah.
My God, Rick, the room just changed. We could talk about the other 4 things in a very different manner because we already talked about the human part first.
And we see that over and over again when obviously see the light bulb go on in regards to what safety can mean for a company. I love to tell the story about Alcoa Aluminum. And this is back in the I believe in the 90s, early 90s or so. And there's a gentleman called I think his name is John O'Neill. He used to be the Treasury Secretary under George Bush. He took over for Alcoa. And when he came on board, as the stock was tanking and they weren't making any money, they were having all sorts of terrible injuries in their plant. And he said, these were to the investors, the stockholders, everything else, that safety was going to be their priority. Well, guess what happened? The stock even went down further. We're going, who's this guy's? We need to make money. We don't need to prioritize safety.
Wow.
Well, what is really incredible about what happened over the next 3 years was that because he prioritized safety, because the employees felt they started to feel valued, they started becoming part of the team. They started making suggestions in regards to efficiency things that they wanted to see on the floor. When we talk about injuries, like in a steel plant, these are catastrophic injuries. Yeah. And you talk about a ripple effect. I'm telling you, the ripple effect of an injury on the job, it just is beyond just the money that it costs to help them get back on their feet. Yeah. But within 3 years, they had reached record profits. They had so much buy-in from all their employees that they saw the culture. They saw that their company really cared about them, which wasn't always the case moving forward. So I love telling the story about Alcoa Aluminum. It just is a prime example of what a good safety culture can do for a company.
That is awesome. And Rick, but with that said though too, I feel like we're also bombarded in this era of statistics here, data here. We can measure everything. In your experience, have you seen any either some data points that we've missed out? That's a wonderful human story, right? That we're looking at the data, we look at the stock. Okay, I could change my behavior tomorrow, but I don't because I look beyond that. Yeah. Is there something that you have learned in this journey that either how we look at safety data that we can either go deeper in or just look at it a little bit differently that either humanizes the story or help us look at safety a little bit differently?
Well, I think you've hit it. It's how do we humanize this thing? And so beyond just the safety data, how are our employees in our job? Are they satisfied? Yeah. Are they contributing? Are they do they feel protected? They feel safe? Yes. Can they talk to their superiors? Can they talk to their cohorts in regards to what might be going on the floor? Yeah. It used to be safety. If you were the guy that brought up a safety issue, well, you were you as we used to say, don't be such a baby. Get it done. We got a job to do. Just get it done. This is how we've always done it, right? Yeah. But if somebody were to call that out today in a safety culture, they'd be like, okay, let's step back. All right, she doesn't feel safe or this process may not be exactly what we should be doing. Let's have a conversation, and then that becomes an opportunity to be able to build some team, build some culture in the company.
That is awesome. Yeah. That reminds me of another story too. When I had opportunity to work in manufacturing industry, we had a wonderful safety program, absolutely putting in a priority. We had broken some records of how many days without a reportable, which is a big deal. And then as those records started getting broken, we started getting some financial rewards for breaking those records. And all of a sudden, another month passes by, another record. There was, oh, wow, celebration, food, another financial reward. Several months pass. I don't know how many financial rewards we got, but we got a significant amount. And then the record, unfortunately, then falls. We have a recordable. Well, later on, a few months after that, Rick, an investigation breaks out that, we had several recordables throughout that whole period. And no one had reported them because they didn't want to be the ones that impacted everyone else's financial reward. So the incentive, the culture around the incentive had eaten up our ability to just work safely to a certain extent.
Well, and that is such a good point because it depends on what are those incentives, and certainly a financial incentive is always going to be a positive if it's presented correctly, right? Yeah, but I could see that happening in so many different companies. Say, oh, don't say anything, all right, you just lost a finger, it's okay, it'll grow back.
But it goes back to like the impact that person probably. Those 2 or 3 recordables that we had during that time. Who knows how that person felt coming back to work. The team that their family. Right. All these things. And then maybe even if they have young ones that are seeing their mom injured, their dad injured, and them not being taken care of, that has ripple effects for years.
Well, and that's kind of really building a false culture of safety within, and certainly or belonging within a company as well. So I think it's important that we set up our safety culture with a very strong foundation. But that's just not uncommon. That's a common story that I hear all the time.
And that's why the National Safety Council is so important today, right? Bringing y'all in to have these conversations, to set those best practices in these organizations. Right. Can you share with us a little bit more about how this work gets done in the different organizations around?
Well, absolutely. We have, as I started talking about, we have really 2 sides of our business. We have our roadway and our workplace. And our roadway business is probably as big as our workplace, if not bigger. If you think about it, everybody is going to work every single day. So where is our greatest danger from a safety standpoint? Well, it's on our way to the
Yeah.
job site. It's on our way to work. It's taking your front office person going to the bank, going to the post office. There's just so many risks that go on, and so we try to bring that to a higher level, because we're all the best drivers, right? No, everybody else is the worst driver on the road. Because we all know how to drive better than everybody else.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what we try to do is try to remind people, because it's automatic. We get in our car. You go, what's automatic? We automatically put our seatbelt on.
Yeah.
Automatically turn on the car. Well, at the same time, automatically, when we start and get to our car and get to the office, you go, how did I get here? I don't even remember stopping at that stoplight.
Yeah.
Did I stop at that? Because then we have this cognitive dissonance that's going on, that we just separate ourselves, and so we're not always completely present when we're driving. And so many times we kind of remind them, hey, we're driving a 3,000, 4,000 pound missile right here, and we're all in danger. So we really kind of start at the basis and the basics with a lot of companies there, and then that builds into that workplace. That okay, now we've got you guys thinking about your roadway safety. Now let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the rest of your company.
Okay.
So that's how we get to talk
reminder.
about it. And what's really been an interesting discovery for me, as I talked about from a business standpoint, how do we make the business case for safety? We go in there and say, listen, we can create some ROI, because when you create a safety program, we can then help you and advocate for you with your insurance companies, your liability insurance, because one of the biggest ticket items for all businesses is what? Is our liability insurance. And we're writing that check, every year, and it's $20, $30, $40, $50, $100,000 a year, for depending on what your company is doing. It's a lot of money. Now, if we can reduce that by 10%, 15, 20, 25%, now you're talking about, I'm making money on my safety. So that's what we try to help and go out and evaluate with companies on the workplace side. So,
and I think what you're sharing with me is that work is not easy, but it's simple. Right? It's putting the human first, putting the employee first, and building something around them, which is going to have a significant ROI in the long term.
Well, and it's a lot. It's so simple. It's just not about putting a training program in front of people. It's really about identifying and recognizing people for what they're really worth, and that they are a human and they're worth being around. And when you create that value in that employee, and they have that comfort, they have that safety around them, they feel safe around there, then all of a sudden your culture just begins to grow and shift in that entire company.
As you were sharing the road safety story, Rick, it also reminded me of one of my other experiences. I remember going to this workplace, into this campus, and it was a massive research facility in Houston that I was working in at that time, and their speed limit was 17 miles per hour. I was like, 17, what? And then they had another speed limit, I think it was 13, and another one was like 21. And I remember asking them one time, I was like, why is your speed limit so awkward? And they're like, because we want you to remember it, right? Because or else it's just another 20 miles, 25, and then you just lose it, right? It's just another sign out there. But if we make it a unique number, you'll remember it coming in. I'm sure, eventually if you worked there 20, 30 years, you'll probably just remove it. But there's just that little moment that they recognize how sometimes we just take these moments for granted. You put on a seatbelt exactly how you do. You take the same roadway, the same way you do. Right. But just creating that little experience just a little bit differently.
Yes.
That reminded you like, oh, wait, I'm in a different place now. I need to drive a little bit differently.
Right. Well, just in that example alone. Well, how many times do you really look at your speedometer, right? Well, if I'm doing, if it's 16 miles an hour, I go, whoa, I got an extra mile an hour to go here. So you're really watching your speedometer now. And all of a sudden, now you're an active participant.
Absolutely.
in your driving.
Absolutely, right? And they were just very committed to safety. It was those little things that they said, hey, we've realized that if we just create something unique, it'll change the experience for our employees. There was probably maybe 1,000 of us in that facility, but still, that's 1,000 lives, 1,000 families that are impacted in any moment, right? People crossing, going with the research stuff or what have you, right?
Right. Well, and you talked about the ripple effect too. And I think one of the things that we don't want to really gloss over is the fact is when we have a serious injury or fatality in a job site, it's just not about that one person, that worker that may have lost their life for whatever reason that may have been. But you think about the people who were there on the job site with them. what does that do to their psyche? I mean, PTSD. We've got to start. Talk about the counseling of seeing something that's so catastrophic happen on the job. Maybe they were friends. What about the family around that, and how deep that goes in regards to the sadness and and how that impacts the family, and then the economic part of that, and where does that go, and what the ripple effect of that from that generation on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we just don't really understand how far the ripple effect is when we have one of these catastrophic injuries or fatalities on a job site. So that's really our job, is really kind of help people visualize and understand this is, safety is at any level very, very serious business. And we want to show that to them and really bring that love, help them understand that love. And I think when we talk about that, the employees, again, as we talked about, it creates so much safety, personal safety within those employees there, that they're able to be much better employees as well.
And Rick, I think where that resonates personally with me, and I think when we talk about safety, is one of the things I've realized doing this work about why I'm so passionate about the future human experience is because I've come to a realization that the human experience is a finite experience, right? We don't have our days guaranteed. We have these moments that we don't know how long they're going to be with us or with our colleagues, with our families. And so putting that human experience, putting the safety of someone, that's why it resonates so much, because we know that this is not going to be something forever. But if we could create just a little bit more space to have an authentic human experience, we'll always come with the best that we can into our workplace.
Well, to that point, I think if we've most of us anyway, have probably lost somebody very near and dear to us. And you take yourself back to that point when you discovered that, or even today, how you feel about that person, how you think about that person. I think if we can bring that same kind of mentality and that kind of thoughtfulness, if you will, that being present all the time, if we bring that into the workplace, I think you're 100 yards down the line further than you were before, and so much more successful in certainly loving your employees.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rick, with that said, we're also in this era of automation, artificial intelligence. It seems that we're getting a new headline every single day on how AI is impacting the workplace. Can you share with us a little bit more about what you're seeing from the lenses of safety and the role that automation and technology get to play in that today?
As we all know, AI we don't even know where it's going to go. But today, I think it's pretty exciting, and certainly in the safety industry, because AI can help us so many ways identify safety issues and bring those. A lot of times, we'll walk by the same place, which in AI may identify as, hey, this is a safety hazard at some point. And so so AI is going to have a huge impact on where safety is going to go. But at the same time, you can never, ever take the human element out of safety. And I think when we always look at, and I think in any industry, when we look at AI, whether it's safety or anything else, I think the human element has always got to stay in there, because we don't want to, Harold, I guess, is the computer and whatever that movie was. We don't want Harold telling us what to do, right? But I think making sure that we continue to inject ourselves. AI will be a great tool to be able to help identify, from a safety standpoint for us. But again, there's a lot of space for AI in safety, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
And how has it impacted how the National Safety Council gets to deliver their content? I mean, now that you have virtual tools versus in person, is it a little bit mix of both?
Well, we're still kind of playing through that in regards to how we're going to deliver content, I guess, to those, because obviously, as we get into technology, we deliver a lot of our training virtually, whether it's with a virtual instructor or it's online. And that's just the way people are learning today. But we will always advocate that in-person learning is always going to be best, because look at how we, as we talk, if you don't have that interaction, in a room of people that have similar experiences or have an experience that they want to share, where they can then all of a sudden build the conversation that creates so much more in regards to where you were going. I think that is such a stronger message and a stronger safety plan than just saying, here, read this book and then take this test, right? And just checking the boxes. And that's, I think, one of the things that we try to get away from is that we just don't want to have people checking the boxes that they did this, because your employees are going to see that. They're going to say that you're only checking the boxes. How can we go beyond just checking the boxes that we did our safety stuff and then we're going to move on.
Well, one of the in-person events or one of the in-person experiences that you're about to have is the conference that's coming up in April. Can you share with us a little bit more? We'll have links to it in the show notes, but tell us a little bit more about what the conference is and what could folks expect.
Yeah, it's that Southwest Safety Conference, and we do it annually, and we always do it in the spring, and so we'll have it here coming up in April. And the Southwest Safety Conference brings safety professionals from all over the country to come and listen to people like you and be able to offer opinions. We have kind of changed our direction. We don't do breakout sessions. We bring really leadership and thought-provoking ideas and bring people so that we have this. When I talk about having that exchange of ideas, that's having these people in the room. So we'll have about 200 or 300 people show up. We'll have 40 or 50 exhibitors. We got a great new hotel down the street in Mesa that we'll be doing it at, the DoubleTree. And so we're really, really excited about this year's program because we've got people who are in safety. We've got people who talk about culture. And I think it's going to help our safety leaders be able to go back and be much better safety leaders.
And there's one story that I have not shared on the podcast that I will share on another date, but I will share on the day of that conference and that keynote. So if you're watching this episode, sign up for that conference. It's going to be a really cool experience. With that said, Rick, before I go to your final question, we do something fun with our guests. We ask them to come up with a surprise question for me. Rick, what do you have for me today in the Future Human Experience?
Well, Eric, I think one of the things that people want to know most about you is that how did you get in this business? I mean, do you just wake up and say all of a sudden, I want to? And I think some people are born for it, but I don't. You were obviously in another industry, very successful at what you were doing. So what brought you into this business?
I love that. I was very fortunate because I was in another industry to be given certain stages, certain platforms to either interview people, fireside chat, lead keynotes. People were always interested in my perspective, which I always appreciated. But it was also through them that I learned that the stage or the stages are platforms for others or to inspire. And it wasn't until maybe right after COVID, a former executive that I got to work with reached out to me and said, "Eric, can you come and speak at this leadership conference?" I said, "Sure." At this for another company. I said, "Yeah, sure. I'm more than happy to help." And then I was wrapping up the call with them. They said, "Well, how much do you charge?" And I was like, "Nothing." I don't know what the answer is. I was like, "Nothing." And they're like, "No, Eric, really, we're paying all the speakers in this conference. Please let us know what is your fee." I didn't know what to say, Rick. I think I said, "You give me a Starbucks gift card," which was embarrassing. Well, but that was a little bit that started this path of the seed that was planted.
Well, and I think that's interesting because for me, it's the same way as how do we help people get to another level? Because there is no money that I need for that. Because the joy of just helping other people and being part of that, part of their equation as well. There's just no greater joy. So
absolutely,
I'm
Rick.
with you on that.
And I think that was that experience. I was like, wow, if I could be part of building something that could be of service to others, and build a business out of it. Wow, what a beautiful call to action. And also I have an amazing wife that just supported me the whole way through. So Eric, if there's something you want to go and explore, do it. Because I think also when she started exploring her own business as a photographer, I was the one nudging her as well, saying, if you want to go and do this, I got your back. And so 7 years later, it comes back full circle for me. But with that said, Rick, one of the things, before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you one question. You shared this beautiful story with me before we started on camera that you met someone, you bumped into someone not too long ago, and it was just like this aha moment for you. Can you share with us a little bit more about who this person was and what was your reflection on meeting this person?
It was, and I think it's just a small world, and no matter where you're at, you're going to run into somebody that you know, or it's that 6 degrees of separation. I was in Mexico. In Laredo, it's down the Baja coast, and we had a timeshare there, and we're playing golf over there. But I'm in the elevator at the hotel, and this gentleman's and they just got back from a fishing trip, and him and his sons. His sons were probably early 20s. And we just started up a conversation, asking him where he's from. And he says he's from New Mexico. I said, oh, I'm from New Mexico. And I said, oh, really? I said, I'm from Albuquerque. He said, oh, I am too. I said, oh, what high school did you go to? Well, we found out we went to the same high school. I said, you're a little younger than I am. I said, how old are you? He said, well, when did you graduate? Well, he told me when he graduated. Well, he graduated with my son.
Wow.
Well, and he starts looking, he says, Mr. Murray? And he says, I wrestled with Dustin, which was my son. And so, and he says, you are at every single one of our wrestling matches. He says, I still remember that today. And he says, you were the only parent that was there constantly. And of course, a lot of parents are always there.
Sure.
But I traveled. I went with them where they traveled at the same time. And I was there with them all the time. He said, Mr. Murray, that just meant a lot to us. And he says, and he introduced me to his sons at the same time. He says, and I try to teach my sons that same thing in regards to, you got to be, family's everything.
Wow. Yeah. Rick, what a beautiful story. When you shared that with me before the camera started, it made me think about my dad being at all of my games. And then when my dad had the injury, which I've shared on this podcast, all of my friends reaching out to me and just sharing, hey, we remember your dad being at the games. It meant a lot to us. I remember your dad doing the lap when we won the championship. And it meant a lot to a lot of folks. And your story is just a reflection on, sometimes we get to make an impact, but that ripple effect, right? Because now he's going to be a different parent because of what he learned from Mr. Murray.
Well, we talk about the mustard seed, and you're planting that mustard seed. And when does that sprout? And sometimes it sprouts early. Sometimes it sprouts way down the road. And it just doesn't matter when it sprouts.
Absolutely. And what a mission for a National Safety Council. Rick, thank you so much for being part of the Future Human Experience. We're so excited for the upcoming conference, but more importantly, on helping us plant more seeds around the world.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode. I'm inspired to hear that these conversations are resonating within our communities, our organizations, our companies, and our households all around the world. If you found this conversation to be valuable, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share it with someone else. I do believe that as the future gets much more digitized, it gives us an opportunity to be much more human as well. And these conversations are part of that journey. So if you're enjoying the content on this channel, please check out these videos. Thank you.